Welcome everybody. Michael, founder and CEO over at The Leading Practice, have the great privilege of interviewing and speaking with Dr. Clay Elswick. He's touted, at least by us and his patients, as the best chiropractor in Lexington, Kentucky. He's been practicing for over 30 years. And just a couple things that impressed me about Dr. Elswick, besides his amazing patient care. He's been receiving referrals from his patients for during that time. And he has currently 350, almost 350 Google reviews with a 5-star rating, if you can believe that. So 5-star rating. So that really speaks volumes to the way that he manages his practice. And so Dr. Elswick, thank you so much for making the time today in your busy schedule and for allowing me to speak with you today.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always good to be able to give back in some way. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Dr. Elswick, we'd love to know, maybe you can take us back to kind of the beginning, give us a little overview of why and how you became a chiropractor. What led you down that path?
Yeah, my journey started back when I had an injury in high school when I was playing football, and a pretty significant knee injury that required surgery. And in our town, I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. The guy that took care of knee problems in those days used to be the physical therapist for the University of Nebraska football team. And so he had retired out of physical therapy, gone into chiropractic. And so he had this great wealth of knowledge combining physical therapy and chiropractic. And when you had knee problems, he's the guy you went to. So I went to him to start rehabbing my knee and trying to get back to where I could play. And through that, started developing a relationship with him, got interested in chiropractic. And then that's ultimately how I ended up choosing chiropractic. I loved kind of what chiropractic stood for, and I liked that holistic kind of approach to healthcare. And I had always been interested in healthcare in general, and just thought, I like this approach better. So that's kind of how it started for me.
Very nice. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think many docs, at least that I've spoken with, have a similar path, and that really leads to a nice passion for what you do in helping people. So we appreciate that. So if we fast forward a little bit now, and you've been operating your practice for a number of years, what are some of the biggest challenges that have popped out to you as a practice owner?
The first thing that jumps into my mind, Michael, is the declining reimbursements that we see in healthcare in general. It seems like you work a lot harder now to try to get the same dollar. And so I think that's been the biggest frustration. I know, back early, I started in the early 90s in chiropractic, and back in those days, you billed your services, you collected about 85% of what you billed, and we currently collect about 57% of what we bill. And so that's a big change in terms of being able to generate income so that you can grow your practice, or in our case, we've got multiple providers. You got to be able to provide for them and have a staff that works. So that's kind of been my biggest challenge, is trying to navigate that. My thought was always, once you kind of got this thing rolling, it would be okay and keep going. But man, around every corner, there's something new that you have to kind of deal with. So that's been the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, I could definitely appreciate that. And so obviously that challenge has an impact on not only the patients, of course, impacts their ability to get proper care, but then also the practice. How have you addressed those challenges?
Yeah, for me, I'm in my 32nd year, so I've been doing this a while, and I'm looking to try to back off a little bit. I don't want to stop because I love what I do, but I'm trying to slow down some if I can. So my thought was moving to a little bit more of the idea of a group practice where you have some other providers with you, where you can share overhead. Since it's harder to make the same dollar, it seems reasonable then to try to cut your overhead as much as you can. You don't have to work quite as hard. So that's been the strategy. In my practice now, there's 2 other chiropractors with me, and they're trying to grow their practice. We are as a group. And we've got 3 massage therapists. So kind of a multidisciplinary kind of approach with the idea of a group practice where you're sharing overhead as much as you can.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think many docs that are probably listening to this interview right now are wanting a similar path to reach that goal. You know, they'd like to treat and maybe grow their practice, perhaps even opening additional locations. What were some of your short-term and long-term goals? Maybe you set them now and are reaching them, and set them in the past. But what helped you get to where you're at currently?
You know, initially I had some of those same ambitions, thinking about maybe we'll open up multiple practices and replicate what we're doing. And you know, it didn't take me long to figure out that the time that is required for me to manage that is kind of tough. And so what I started doing was just looking at the other direction. Like, I don't think I want to spread myself that thin. What I'd like to do is try to maybe keep one location, see if we can grow that one location by having multiple providers and go at it that way. And you know, that's the traditional model that you see in medicine anyway, is a group practice, but they tend to have a bunch of physicians, which of course, you know, I mean, let's face it, medicine is a little bit more accepted than chiropractic, so I think it's easier to get the patient in the front door as a medical doctor. Chiropractors, it's a little bit more of a challenge, so it makes it a little bit tougher. But you know, those things are changing, so we're starting to educate the public about what we do. We're starting to build relationships with, you know, physicians and referral sources that allow us to generate more business. And that's just kind of where I've focused. It was kind of the balance between trying to grow and get what you want to get out of your business, but not be overextended. And the more I worked, the harder I worked. I was working long hours, and eventually I said, "Hey, that's a little bit more than I want to do. Is there another way to do that?" That's where I landed.
Very nice. I've always appreciated and respected your balance with that. You know, a lot of us have families, and so we're trying to balance our workload with time spent doing the things we love and with the people we care about. And I've always appreciated that. You know, a lot of docs that I talk with or speak with, they struggle with that transition of being the only practitioner, and then bringing on more docs, and then there's a training process, and then there's of course filling their schedules, which are both challenges, especially right now during 2022, as we enter 2022. What's helped you to kind of, how did you bridge that gap of growing your practice from going from one to more without getting overloaded?
Yeah, you know, for us, I mean, largely when I'm by myself with the years that I've had in practice, I think we most of our new business came from personal referral. So probably 70% of our business was from direct referral. And then we've always done marketing in some form or fashion to help build. As I moved along and my practice became a little bit more established, I didn't have the need to do as much marketing. But then when we started adding people, then I started to have to revisit that marketing idea again, because we're going to have to provide for them. If you're going to bring, you know, a student out of school, put them in practice and help them get started, the debt load that they have now is pretty significant. So you've got to have some strategy for them to be able to survive, obviously. So the way that we've gotten there is to lean back into marketing, doing anything we can to generate, you know, brand or an awareness of our office, and try to get a little bit more volume in the office so that there's plenty to go around and share. And so that's kind of how we've done it. And fortunately, it's okay. We've been able to do that. And you're always faced with the cost that goes with that, because that's kind of an investment. So that's always, you're trying to balance that. And that's been a little bit of a switch, because as I brought on the new people, I had to be open to maybe going back and doing some things. Had enough to take care of everybody.
Sure. I think you're speaking the fear that most face. It's how do you make that transition? And then you know, marketing is a scary term for a lot of reasons. It even scares me sometimes because it's you know, there's so many moving parts, and all you want to do is run your practice. And so what have you learned when it comes to growth? Any advice that you could offer for those that want to step into that, whether it's about training new docs or filling their schedules, anything that you've learned from your journey? And because I know you've done a bunch of different types of marketing in the past, and different models and methods, anything you've learned that you feel would be beneficial for other docs that are ready to make that same step?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, marketing is a tricky thing. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things to it. The thing that I've embraced about marketing is don't be afraid to fail at trying some things because I'm not a marketer. I don't really understand the inner workings of how really marketing works. I just know that I need to spend some money and I need to measure it and I need to try the best I can to see if that's generating return on my investment. And if it is, then I'm not afraid to spend more because I'm getting the return. And even though that dollar amount can creep up and it raises your overhead, if you focus on that return on investment side, it seems to take care of itself. And so far, that's been successful for us, and we've been able to grow that and develop the other two providers that are here. So at this point, that's working. I know that's constant change. So every time you think you're doing okay, there's something else to deal with. But that's where we are today.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate it. I think that's good advice too for a doc, because sometimes jumping off that cliff, number one, being willing to make the investment is crucial. If you're going to grow your business, you have to have that piece to reach the goal, but measuring it and tracking it is so important. Tracking the results and because then you can kind of maintain control of where your practice is going and guide along the steps with educated data to back that decision. And so that's a great takeaway for anyone listening. Track, measure your results. If you're listening carefully, that will help you know if you're getting the results that you want. And so I appreciate that insight, Dr. Elswick. What other goals do you have? Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
You know what? I'm afraid of retirement, to be honest with you. I love what I do, so we're fortunate. I hope every chiropractor's in that boat. We're fortunate to be able to do what we do. I love what I do. I love the interaction that we get to have with our patients. I love the fact that we develop relationships with our patients. So I don't want to give that up. I'm afraid of not being structured when I retire. So what I'm doing, which I think is a model that is hopefully achievable in the chiropractic world, is can I cut back a little bit, let the new providers, the new practitioners, let them start to experience some of the I've had, and we find that balance where I can continue to work a little bit, but maybe not work as much, and then hopefully they can start to earn more and get what they're trying to get out of it. And so, we'll see. Like I say, a work in progress, but that's where we currently are. I mean, for me personally, I've been able to, I'm about 3 days a week now, 3.5, and work hard. We're busy when we're here, but it's also creating that extra time to do some of the things I want to do. But, it's taken me 30 years to get here. Process. So I say work hard, and then hopefully you can get some data as it goes down that road, and absolutely open to the idea that this may change. Currently, that's kind of where I've landed on that issue.
Very nice. Yeah, I appreciate that. Those are beautiful goals. And maybe just switching back a little bit to running your practice. What are some of the key elements to running a successful practice? We talked a little bit about marketing. Any other key elements that, as you think about the day-to-day things that maybe weren't going well, and then you were able to make some adjustments that help you run your practice efficiently, smoothly, have good interaction with your patients because you're not overly stressed out about what's going on with the management side. Any key elements that you feel like would be good takeaways for anyone listening?
I always focus. I really try to focus on the patient. I try to treat the patient the way I think you should treat them, with respect. If you treat them as an equal person, really, if you respect them, then you're going to get out of it what you're looking for. They're going to feel valued, and when you have a customer that is valued and feels that way, they're going to refer their friends. They're going to be open to sending people into your practice. I don't know. Sometimes the doctor, we get the complex that, hey, we have all the answers and you need to do it my way. I've just learned that if you're a little bit more open to the people and you listen to them and right by them, then it'll work for you also in return. That's pretty simple, but sometimes I think we can get lost there a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That really is what it's about. And that way of treating patients obviously is evident in the reviews. I mean, I know not everything is reflected online, but 5-star reviews across the board. and so many of them is just really impressive, and it shows. Apparently, you not only do you have that mantra in the way you treat your patients, but you've also trained that in the other docs that you work with. Has that been an easy thing to do, or what have you found when training them are things that you try to get across for them to be able to be effectively following your pattern?
I keep focusing on trying to get the new providers to understand that the patient's got to be the priority.
Mm.
And if you treat them the right way, then they're gonna give you a review that's positive because you care about their outcome. Not get lost in this doctor complex where you're the all-knowing person that happens. It just seems to work that way well for us here. I think as a new provider, you come out of school, you have this new education, you're excited about it, you're full of knowledge, you want to share that. And I think sometimes when you're in that place, you easy to look over top the patient and dictate to the patient what they need, but you're not really hearing what they're saying. And so I just keep telling our guys, pay attention to what your patients say. We've even had discussions about the reviews that we get here. I mean, that's critical. We want that reputation. We want a 5-star review. But if we get a review that's not good, that's important too. And I don't run from reviews that aren't good. If I get one that's not the standard we have, I address it and say, okay, then we failed in some way. So how can we make that better the next time? Because you can't be a 5-star every day. There's going to be things that happen. But in general, if you put the patient first, if you really care about their outcome, if you're listening to them, I think it's going to work out on that end. It's going to reflect in the review that they give you, and then that goes out, in your marketing so that people see that. And I hope they see that as genuine, because that's what we're after. We're after a genuine review that reflects how we feel about people over here, and then that'll translate. So successful for us. It's really been successful from day one. We just keep investing in the person, trying to listen to them. And
Very nice. Well, I can appreciate that model, and it's obviously it's not just something that you put on. It's how you really feel about working with your patients and what you want your practice to be known for, and obviously paying dividends in the reward you're looking for as well, which is a good reputation. And so we can appreciate that. Reputation is important, and sadly it's lost often in the world today. So we appreciate those comments. So maybe a last question for you. If you could share one thing with new chiropractors that they don't teach in school, and maybe you already shared it, but what would it be?
I would maybe push two ideas together. One, just really make sure that you're focused on the person, the patient that you're treating, the right way, with respect. We get hung up on, hey, our patients need to be on a treatment plan, they need to do it our way, but your patients may not want to do it that way. So if they don't, allow them to have the freedom to do it the way they want to do it. And they might come back to you later and say, hey, that didn't work for me. I now need to do it your way. But I don't know. I think if you'll just listen to your patient and try to give them what they're after, then it may not be exactly like you think they should do, but that'll work out in the end, because, if they're not getting well, they're going to have to do something different. So listen to your patient, and then, don't be afraid to step out and experiment with some things. Don't be afraid to fail. We've been talking about the marketing side of this thing. At this stage of my practice, I would ordinarily not want to market this much because we're established. But again, if I'm going to build a business and I'm going to make sure the providers that are with me are getting out of it what they're trying to get out of it, I've just learned that you have to invest, and you have to be okay with some trial and error, because it doesn't always work. So when it doesn't, you say, okay, I tried that didn't work, let's go do something different, let's tweak it, let's make it better. So don't be afraid to fail, make the patient first, and that's not a pretty good formula to get you where you want.
That's a beautiful approach. Absolutely appreciate that. And maybe just you mentioned marketing again. I thought maybe a little more along those lines. You mentioned tracking what's happening and watching it, and I think that's so important. What about for chiropractors who are looking to develop their marketing program? and they've got all these different pieces and potential people that they could work with. Maybe they're doing it in-house because they've got a limited budget. Any advice for them as far as what pieces they could focus on first, or what you found valuable in maybe making the decision to invest in marketing? How did you determine what kind of plan to put together? Just any kind of thinking process that would help them, direct them down that to where they can end up with a marketing program that's streamlined and really works for them. And they're focusing on the pieces that are important and not maybe wasting money on anything doesn't seem to be as valuable, just from your perspective.
Well, so this will be a shameless plug for what you do. So let me start by saying that. But
Okay.
I'd say find a person that you feel like you can trust. Because again, we're in the business of marketing because we own our own businesses, but we're not marketers. So we like to think we are, but I think ultimately we're not. So find somebody that has some expertise in that area. And again, you're going to have to. Hopefully, you can find somebody that you trust. If you don't, you need to keep looking for that. I've done a lot of different things. I've had companies help me that I didn't really trust, and I even had results with some of them. But the one thing that I've really appreciated with working with you, Michael, is that I do trust what you all tell me. And that doesn't mean it's going to always be right or it's going to be seamless. It does mean that if you're trying to get me somewhere and you have the experience and the knowledge to get me there, if I can just lean into that and be okay with it, not be afraid of it, but trust somebody else who has more knowledge and experience in that area than I do, I think I can find my way. And because I'm tracking it as well as I can, I'll know if it's working or not. If it's not working, of course, out of that and do something different. If it is working, then maybe that person can help you get where you want to get. And like I say, with us now spending a little bit more on marketing than we would normally, I was very reluctant at first because I'm thinking, I'm trying to cut back. I don't know how much I want to spend if I'm trying to cut back. But I've learned if you're gonna help grow the practice for the providers that are with you, my experience so far has been you're going to have to invest in them and you're going to have to help them get there, because if they can't get there, then that's not going to help me achieve the goal I'm after. So find a person that does the marketing and, make sure you trust them and measure it as well as you can. And then hopefully you'll land where I've landed. So it's been a good experience for me so far.
Thank you, Dr. Elswick. I really wasn't fishing, but I do appreciate those comments, and we've really enjoyed working with you as well, as you know. And one additional question along those lines is determining the budget. When it comes to finding someone you can trust is definitely crucial, and that takes time to even build that relationship. And it's a risk. But one of the big questions I get all the time is what should be my marketing budget? I spend X, but I've tried to spend Y, and it's all these different numbers, or they don't know how to set that budget. What helped you determine how much you wanted to spend on your marketing in order to get the return? Is there anything you could share along the lines of how you kind of arrived at that?
Yeah, I think as well as you can measure what you're doing, which is a little bit harder and trickier than it, not just a one-to-one, really, but as well as you can do that. I mean, if you're bringing in more money marketing than you're spending, that return on investment is positive. So if you're getting in $2 for every dollar you spend, and strategically it would make sense that you can keep doing that because you're making more than it's costing you. So I do believe in that return on investment principle. How high can you get that? That depends on. I know there's a lot of different strategies, and one of the things done with you guys as we've worked this model is we've been able to get to a $4 return on every dollar that we've spent so far. And I remember you telling us early on that would be a goal that you would have for us. And honestly, that's kind of hard in the marketing world to get there. It's really been my experience, at least, that it's not an easy place. So far in the time that we've worked with your company, that's where we've been. And so, you can't be afraid to spend a little bit then, because it requires that to kind of get it going. It takes time. And, but that principle has worked out for us so far. And so it seems to be, providing additional new patients. I know when I started with you, literally the month that we started, we saw increased business, and that's not what I normally experience. So much so that it made you even question, well, I don't know if that's real then, because that doesn't make sense. But honestly, it's been there. And so obviously there are some strategies that work. You have to be open to those. You got to find them. If one is not, you may have to carve it away. But when you find something that works, then I think you keep cultivating that. And again, you got to trust the people who know what to do, because when it gets down to the nitty gritty and real deep into the details, I mean, we definitely don't know what's going on there. I mean, we're certainly just trying to out. So find somebody you trust, measure it, and see.
Thank you, Dr. Elswick. We appreciate those comments, and really, again, we appreciate your comments about us. We've loved working with you, and we're happy that we've been able to be successful, and we'd love to see that continue. But ultimately, making those decisions are they're challenging, and especially for a new doc. And I know they're getting hit with marketing all the time. It is a big, it is what we do, yes, but it's a big challenge. It's a big problem that you have to overcome if you want to reach the goals that you're looking for. Eventually, growing your practice. There's other pieces too, but that's a big piece. And those guiding principles, measuring your return, knowing what to expect, finding someone you can trust, I think are huge for helping someone kind of weed out maybe possibilities for marketing that aren't going to be successful, and finding something that's going to work for them. And then hopefully they'll be in a similar situation as you, where they start seeing the practice grow and they're able to train docs and follow in your path. And really, I think there's not much that can compare with having patients that you treat so well and making them the number one priority. I think that just speaks volumes to who you are as a person and as a doctor. And so we appreciate that very much, Dr. Elswick, and thanks so much for taking the time today. I know you're busy running your practice. Fortunately, you have good staff, at least the ones we've worked with, and very capable and on top of it. And so we look forward to speaking with you further in the future, and we hope that all of you listening in on our interview here today benefited from it. And feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you have, and we look forward to the potential of meeting you or working with you in the future. Thanks so much, Dr. Elswick.